Hello everyone, my name is First Facto, and today I thought I'd be doing something different on this channel. Now normally on this channel, I'll create dumb challenge mods, play those dumb challenge mods, but I decided, you know what, why not we do something different? Why don't I explain the code of how these dumb challenge mod works? And for today's case, we're going to be looking at the Boss Flamethrower mod, which gives every single boss a flamethrower, which you can see in these two videos in action. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at the main class. This right here. Whenever you initiate a new mod, it will automatically create a class with the mod class, which is the framework of the mod. So what I add in there is a public function called talk. And what this function does is that it displays the text in the chat to say that the flamethrower has been enabled or disabled. So like what this first does is check if you're in single player or multiplayer. If you're in single player, display it by main.new text. If you're in multiplayer, then broadcast that chat message to the server and then to everyone else. And then we'll talk about this later once we get to it. Next thing we're going to look at is the flamethrower system. And this one is basically how the whole counter system for the flamethrower works. First thing that does here is initialize all these variables. What flamethrower cooldown does is basically how long until the flamethrower should be activated, and then flamethrower duration is how long the flamethrower should be used. So that if this is set to 20 and this is set to 10 for example, then during the fight every 20 seconds, then the flamethrower will be activated for 10 seconds. And it goes on that loop. And then these are really used to count up towards those values. And then this is the counter for the converting the frames to real seconds. And then this is the variable to check if the boss is alive. And then this is to check if the flamethrower is alive. And this is a list of NPC IDs. So the reason why this is here is that like what I could actually do is just like right here main.npc.boss, check if that's true or false to see if a boss is alive. However, for some boss parts, it won't work exactly 100%. So like for example, a warm boss is like the Eater Roads. This may be a boss, it may be flagged as a boss, but maybe this isn't, or this isn't. So this is just a guaranteed way to make sure that if the boss is alive, then the boss is alive and it will have the flamethrower. And then after that, we got this post update world function. Basically, it does the updates for the world, so like maybe like spread grass, pick through the time, all that kind of stuff. Then it runs my code. So first it does here is that it looks at the config to see how long you set these variables to. Then it checks to whether or not set them to minutes. Just times it by 60 to convert those seconds to minutes. Then after that, it will set the boss to be false. Then this line right here, it'll through every single NPC that's currently in the game. So this includes like enemies, critters, town NPC, bosses, anything that can move is an NPC basically. That's not a projectile. So then first it checks if the current NPC that's looking at is a boss and it's activated, aka it's currently alive. Then they change the boss flag to true, and then does the same for the boss parts as well. Then if the boss is alive, first thing they do, check to see if the counter for cooldown and duration is above the actual max. If it is, set flame to true and then set the cooldown to, then reset the cooldown counter. Same thing with the duration right here. And then after that, for every frame the counter will go up by 1, and if the counter is greater than 60, that means 60 frames have passed in 1 second, which means it's time to increase the second counter for these two. So then the duration will go up and the cooldown will go up by 1 for flames, and of course to reset the counter. And then this, I'll talk about this later once we get to what this code is for. And then if there's no boss that's alive, then set flame to false and make sure that these two are reset to 0. That way you just don't spawn a boss in, and already it's 10 seconds out of 15 seconds into the progression. Next, we're gonna look at the global boss. Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to mention, this one is a mod system, which means it runs in the system class. This one runs in the global NPC, which means this all this code right here is going to affect every single NPC in the game. The first thing it does is that it creates a new boss flame class, which is this code right here. The reason why it does that, so then I'll be able to grab this talk function in here, because as you can see right here, 3 code is referenced to this function, and this is one of it. Then it says, then also have a tracker to see if I already talk or not. So this function right here, what it does is that it triggers every time any NPC spawns in. And what this code does is that first it checks in the config option if Moon Curse is true, which is the one that warns the player about the lighting issue for the flamethrower. That basically makes the flamethrower visible if they don't change the lighting. If true, then checks to see if the current NPC that spawned in is Moonlord's core, which if you spawn in Moonlord's core, Moonlord spawned in. Then it does the talk to tell them about it. But if I just pull up the text value right here. Warning, since you have enabled Moonlord to have a flamethrower, set your lighting to retro tribute to be able to see them. And this right here is just to translate all the text to like English. But then like if someone wanted to translate to Spanish, they could just reference this right here, and then this piece of line still works. That's why it's like that. Alright, anyway, so here is the AI code. Here, first thing that this does, it checks if the current NPC that's handling is a boss, or if it's the Eater World's head, or if it's the Lunar Cultist fake ones. Then after that, this line right here just basically pulls this flag right here to see, hey, is it time to activate the flamethrower? If true, check to see if the flame don't give one to Baptism, since he already has a flamethrower. There's no point giving him another one. This will set the velocity of how far to set the flamethrower, because so here's the projectile that Spatism used for the flamethrower. Basically, the way that the flamethrower works is that every frame this projectile is being shot, but this is shot towards the direction. But this has a very short lifespan. So when this thing is shot, and let's say like it lasts for 12 frames, if you shot here, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It goes all the way up to here, and then the projectile dies. However, since it's being shot every single second, every single frame, then it makes the illusion that this is all just one straight projectile. And the fact that it's being shot every frame makes it very easy for it to like curve normally. So the same logic is just being applied here, because I stole red code for it. Just copy paste. Please don't sue me, red. And the way that this basically it does here is that like for like how far the shot, it increases the speed. So like if we just double times it, and it goes from here to here. Because basically what all this code does right here for all of this is that checks basically based on the current boss and the way it's positioned, rotate the velocity to make sure that it comes actually out of the mouth. So basically, if this forces the Icodulu and Red Knight to shoot out of their mouth, Planter to shoot out of her mouth, Duke Fishron to shoot out of his mouth, Eater Royal to shoot out of his mouth, Destroyer to shoot out of his mouth, Skeletron to Skeletron Prime to shoot under the chin, Deerclaw Wall Flesh, and Lunar Cultists always shoot towards their side. And then everyone else just shoots towards the player. And then for Moonlord, he's a bit special because of this config right here. Because this config will basically say like, is Moonlord allowed to actually have a flamethrower or not? So it checks to see like, okay, is the current NPC Moonlord? If so, then create a flamethrower, and then create the flamethrower. And the way that creates the flamethrower is that creates it at the center of the NPC using the velocity you set earlier with the flamethrower projectile. But then the way the damage is calculated is that it calculates the base contact damage times whatever the flame damage multiplier divided by 4. And also it talks in the chat saying like, hey, Moonlord has activated his flamethrower. That's basically what this line does here. And say that he has talked, which means that you do not need to say it again. And then for everyone else, it does the same thing right here. But then like right here, depending on the gender of the boss, either say the male or the female version, just to get the pronouns correctly. And that's all of this. So the next one is I'm going to look at is the global buff. This is run whenever a buff or debuff is been applied to any incident. So what this does here is that first it checks if the current buff that's looking at is the Curse Inferno debuff. Then it checks to see if the flamethrower should give the Curse Inferno debuff. If it's not allowed to do that based on the config option, then remove the debuff, and then if not, keep it. But then the player also has the ability to disable Curse Inferno in pre-harm mode, which this just checks, hey, is the player in pre-harm mode and the Curse Inferno pre-harm mode is disabled, then remove it as well. And that's all what this does. This right here, it's a whole lot of fucking mess that cost me a whole bunch of headaches. But this is how we get the UI bars to appear to keep track of it. And this is also where this flamethrower player here and also this handle packet thingy comes into play. But first, I gotta explain what this does. So first, it pulls up the it stores the texture of the image bar image, which is this image right here. Then it sets up a panel, a bar, and a title. And on initialize, it sets up a new UI element, which is basically like, think of it as a box that it will store all the elements inside. And then, but depending on where this box is, all those stuff will move inside of it. So for this one, the width of that UI element to be the width of the image bar and the height of it, which is right here. Then it creates the UI element. After that, it creates the image bar UI, and then it adds it into the UI bar. After that, it creates the text Boss Flamethrower bar and adds it on there. And then it initializes the rest that it needs to initialize. Next is this draw function right here, which basically what this function does is that like it checks whether or not it should actually like render the thing, so then it will actually know when to activate or not. In this case, basically it checks, hey, is there a boss alive? If so, show the flamethrower boss. If not, then don't show it. And the way that it checks here is it first checks whether or not it's in single player or multiplayer. Then if it's a single player, it just grabs the code right here. Yeah, it just grabs the variable, the flag right here. However, in multiplayer, it has to do a whole bunch of mess that involve packets. And the reason why is that since you're in single player, you are both the client and the server, which means you could just easily grab the information from the server that's being stored in the system. However, since if you're in multiplayer, you are not the server, which means you have to go up and ask the server, hey, can I get this information? Which is what this does here. It will first be like, okay, the player, it's gonna need all this information for the UI bar is gonna work. So then over here, it's gonna be like, all right, if the player gets this information, make sure to set it to all this. And then in the system right here, after it does all of this, it checks to see, hey, is this a single player client or a multiplayer client? And since it's not a single player, what the server should do is that it should make a new packet and send all this information towards every single player on the server, which then the player will grab that information and be like, okay, the server just sent me new information, I should store this information somewhere, which it does right here. And then when it's needed for the UI bar, the mod will just grab that information, which is how it's able to check. And now this is where all the drawing logic is being handled here. So first, it sets the UI bar based on like the dimensions of the current screen of the game times wherever you set it in there. Set the X value based on the config file and the Y value. And then also moves the title as well based on like where the bar is currently at. Just so it's like always center in the center of the bar. And then after that, it sets the quotient and the color of the bar. After that, it just stores the system or the player. This one's for single player. This one's for multiplayer, just to grab these values that we mentioned earlier for like actually knowing where to draw. The first checks if the single player, then the check to see if the flamethrower is on. If the flamethrower is on, then we use it'll grab the values from the duration and then test the color to the reddish color to draw the bar. If not, then it will just grab the cooldown values, divide them, so then it knows how much to draw it. Then it does the same logic here, but just for a multiplayer. Then this right here will make sure to clamp the values of the of cooldown and cooldown max or duration max between 0 and 1. That way there's no like overflow of it. Then this right here, this will basically draw a new rectangle that will fit inside there based on how long the bar is. And then this will just tell it to draw the progress bar with the whatever color that's assigned. And then this right here, to be honest, I kind of don't really fully know what it does. I just stole this from the example mod of the mod loader since they had this in here. But if I had to guess, this is just basically the adding this whole UI panel that we created and putting it into the logic. So be like, okay, if the thing needs to be drawn, this is where it calls to draw it from. And then finally, we have the config option, which is literally just a whole bunch of copy and paste mess. It'd be like, all right, here's the label of it, here's the tooltip of it, and here's the default value, and here's the cooldown of it. And just basically does that all over and over again. It also splits it into the normal config and the GUI config, just so it's not a complete mess in there. Also, I just noticed all these errors here. That it's probably because of the fact that like when I initially made this, 1.4.3 wasn't out, and I know during the development 1.4.4 they changed they made it more simpler to make the config options for you don't need to define the labels and tooltips in here. So that's what all this is here. It's just yelling me, hey, delete this stuff. But you know what? I'm not gonna listen to you, Team Mod Loader. Anyway, if you made it this far, then you're just as much as nerd as I am. So like and subscribe and all that other YouTube bullshit thingy. Other than that, see y'all.